Hi, I'm Kayla Gomez, a student journalist at Ithaca College, here to speak with Ariana Mosquera, an Ecuadorian political scientist, to talk about the crisis in democracy taking place in Ecuador as we speak.
Hello, my name is Ariana Mosquera Davila. I'm a political scientist specialized in international relations. I've been involved in academic and political research. I'm currently working in an organization that advocates and promotes the protection of human rights of vulnerable communities in my city, Guayaquil.
Okay, so I know a lot of what's going on, so in your own words, can you explain what's currently happening in regards to gang violence and corruption present in today's Ecuadorian government? Like, for example, how did it come to this? Feel free to mention like former President Rafael Correa, the assassination of presidential candidate Fernando V. I'm not going to try to butcher his name, who prior to being a politician was also an investigative journalist, who covered a lot of corruption and violence in Ecuador, and the prison escape of powerful gang leaders and drug lords, along with many other criminals. Like how is that even possible? A lot of the news sources that I could find I wasn't able to verify on. Also, on January 9th, current Ecuadorian President Daniel Noboa, as you know, named 22 gangs as terrorist organizations and imposed a 60-day state of emergency that ended up being extended until April 8th.
A ver, I've been trying to organize my thoughts in a way that I can grasp the reality of Ecuador at this time. I've also shared with you some links that I do believe explain the situation a little bit. Well, how do I say it? A little bit better than me because it's a compilation of experts and analysts that can that review the whole situation. Okay, so Ecuador has been facing an uprise in violence, specifically cartel or drug gang violence, ever since I would say that after, like, ever since the 2020 pandemic, because that took the whole world by surprise, as Hamilton will say. I don't know if you're going to use this though, but I do need to say it because it's a great reference. The world turned upside down. So, what happened? I've been reading a lot, I've been learning a lot because I do not want to give you uh, something incorrect, but I do know that the drug business, the cocaine business changed. Ecuador does not produce cocaine or coca, or like the hoja de coca. We do not produce that, but Colombia, which is our neighbor country, does. And Ecuador has always been considered some sort of ruta de paso. Why? Because we have ports, port cities like Guayaquil and Manta. So they ship, like they move the cocaine, either it's in any shape like cocaine paste or la hoja de coca, through our borders, and we receive it. And here in Ecuador we have, apparently we have facilities that process this and turn it into what is worldwide known as cocaine. Why is this complicated? Because we know, I mean, like you and me and everyone knows that drugs as a business is extremely lucrative. So a lot of people is making money out of it. Uh, what has been happening ever since Correa left and we got Lenin Moreno, who was his vice president, as our president, I believe it was in 2017 election. He became the president, and as you know, like Correa is known for being a leftist president, and Lenin Moreno cut ties with him and became sort of a transition government for us. He wasn't either a leftist or I don't know if you call it rightist, or he was not from the right, but he started eliminating um, public institutions. There were cuts in the institutions' budgets, and a lot of things started to change when he became president. Then we had Guillermo Lasso president, whose term was not finished. I believe it was 2.5 years, maybe almost 3. maybe almost 3, and he, what did he do? There are a lot of takes on this. There are people that say that the reason why Lasso's term was very short, it was because he did not negotiate with the drug cartels, right? He did not budge, as you would say, and that's what led to a bigger uprising, like, of violence and gang groups and everything. How's the situation here in Guayaquil, as one of the most violent cities in Ecuador right now because of the whole drug cartel things and everything? It's complicated. Why? Because right now you just don't know who's involved or who's not involved with drug cartels. Drug cartels make a lot of money, and a lot of people are used to money laundering schemes. Where they use this money that comes from drugs, and they make it look like it's from a legitimate business, which is not. And we currently have a lot of that, and they are so immersed in our society that we cannot know. And what started happening, this, I mentioned before that with Lenin Moreno, we started experiencing like budget cuts in a lot of public institutions, but specifically in like education, social investment, and that led that to like or vulnerable communities who face a lot of finance struggles, the poor, if you may, started to be optionless. We did not have the government or the state's investment in their safety or their education, so they were forced to find new ways to find a way to sustain themselves. And this created the perfect environment for drug lords, even if they're like, we call it tráfico, which is bigger, which is like between countries and everything, and microtráfico, which is within a same country or a local community. These people that were how do you say, dealing, yeah, drug dealer dealing cocaine, started like recruiting these vulnerable people that obviously did not have a lot of money to sustain themselves. So they're vulnerable. They are vulnerable. They're more likely to accept money, and they're more likely to be, how do I say this, shaped into a specific way of behaving, a way of looking into life. So what we've seen, sadly, is a lot of young people and even children being transformed into these little, how do I say this, asesinos, like killers and drug dealers and everything, and it's heart shattering.
Yeah, it's really terrible. And during my research, I actually couldn't find any specific details on this. Like, I couldn't find any details on who these people are other than the victims of their crimes. So, I haven't found any reliable sources to verify, like, that people are being exploited and either forced to work with these gang members, with these gangs, or around them, or face potentially deadly consequences. So, do you think you can expand on that a little bit more, please?
So basically, we have as the public investment in social institutions, aspects, overall social investment suffered a big loss. Uh, these communities, vulnerable communities, I wouldn't say were forced, but they were kind of forced, because once you do not have any way to sustain your family, you must make decisions. And the drug cartels, the drug lords, and all these words that I'm not sure if I'm translating correctly, took advantage of them. And what happened? We had a really big increase in violence because there were more people involved, not only in money laundering, but dealing. And these micro, like really small cartels within a same location, or in this case, the same city in Guayaquil. We didn't know if we were talking with someone that was money laundering for Los Choneros or Los Tiguerones, or there's another one called Chone Killers. Everyone seemed to be involved with drugs because it became a huge part of our economy. A huge part of our economy. Right now, I've had I consider myself to be a very privileged person, as you may know. Like, I finished my bachelor's, I'm currently working, I have that benefit. But I have seen and I work with people that are vulnerable to these things. And one of our main concerns here, at least at the organization that we work at, is how do we keep our kids or youth away from these things, because it's I wouldn't call it easy money because they have to do horrendous things to get it, but I do believe it's like fast money. You do it and you get it. They are, like I mentioned, it's heart shattering because they learn how to shoot guns, they learn how to kill people. We've had very like kids from 13 years, like 13 years old, robbing bus drivers, shooting. We a few weeks ago we had like a literal 14-year-old shot a bus driver to get like his money of the day, his not a salary, but you know how much he makes from that day. He shot him and he died, and it was a 14-year-old. So we have all of these forgotten communities who are becoming used to violence and are being recruited to be violent to do that. And how do you would say, like right now, it said we don't know who's involved with them or not, but as a way of like being a normal human being. A normal human being, I say like a normal citizen that is not involved in these things, but has to go to work, has to live, has to make decisions, has to be out there. You just have to be like, overall, there's a, I would say that violence has become our new reality or new normal. I'm currently not as, well, that was my boss. I'm currently not scared anymore because I turned this shift of mind that basically is like, if it is today is my day, then today is my day, because we live with so much fear already. Because these gang groups, how do they establish themselves in these communities? Like I said, we have small communities or locations like Guayaquil with different gang groups fighting against each other. How do they perpetuate themselves and become the main one? Through fear. So what did they used to do? We had something called, well, we still have it. It's called vacuna, which is basically when someone goes to a small business, like a small convenience store or a, you know, like a panaderia, which here in Ecuador they're really small, they're family owned. What did they used to do? They're like, oh, you have to pay me this amount of money per week, otherwise I'm gonna start like, I'm gonna threaten your life. So a lot of small businesses were forced to close. A lot of people were, that affected a lot of our economy because a lot of people couldn't make money. You know, if my family sustains themselves by selling bread, then all of a sudden a gang member comes here and threatens my life or to bomb my house if I don't pay him, what do I have to do? Close it. And that's how they perpetuate themselves. Yeah, they do not need my money because they're making their own money, but that's how they show me who's the boss of the community. And that's a very Latin like situation. It still happens. It's been happening for the past 2 to 4 years, I believe. And you know, vacuna in English would be like a COVID shot. That's a vacuna. Why do we call it like that? I'll be lying to you if I said I knew the reason why. But for example, me, I do not know, I do not own small businesses. I work in an organization, but I do work in my office is located in vulnerable communities because we work with vulnerable communities. We offer them services and more things. So I know in the first few months I was really scared because I was like, what if something happens? Because these are the places where gangs tend to fight. We actually had to suspend our activities in a specific place, like location of the city, because it was too complicated for us to work, and it actually became a threat to us. Previously, oh yeah, well, that's a little bit of what I'm trying to say, is that livelihood overall in these communities, in these places, is extremely complicated. And I think that by the end of the day, the people that chose to continue living act like, if it's my time, it's my time, because otherwise we would still be living in fear. But there's a lot of it. Like right now I have the privilege, I know I'm a little bit dispersed, but what I wanted to say before is that, for example, there are cities that have been benefited so much of this drug money, such as Manta. Manta is another port city that we have in the province of Manabí. A few years back, it was a normal like city, a beach city because it has a beach. A normal, you know that those do not tend to have, at least here in Ecuador, are not that developed because there's not a lot of like public investment in these cities, and usually tourism peaks, like tourist peaks, are around only lasts like 3 months because that's our summer. It only lasts 3 months. Then there's 9 months of the year where these cities are basically empty. But now it has become like so developed and everything, and it's all because of drug money. Because they're a port city. So there you see like these big businesses, and you already are like, yeah, that's money laundering, because they do not sell anything, but somehow they're still there. And it becomes again the same thing. You see like young people dressed so nice, so well, and you're like, what happened? Because they're like their parents are like, I don't know, both of them work at an office. It wouldn't make sense how this kid out of the blue has like this really expensive car. At least here in Ecuador, it's mad difficult to have that. And then you're like, oh, I understand now. And it's also important to know that Manta is a city where Fito, which is a drug lord that escaped from prison, is from. That's where his family was before they ran away to Argentina, and then they came back. You know, they brought them back. He still is nowhere to be found, Fito. And talking about Fito and prisons and riots is because the, like I said, we used to have these fights. We still have them within a location or a community. Talking about Guayaquil, where we have a lot of small drug cartels. The same thing happened in prisons. For example, if Fito was in a prison, he was the one that ruled it. And there was a video when he escaped that we saw that he actually lived in a really big space. He had a TV, air conditioner. He was very comfortable. And that's when you start noticing how corruption is so intertwined with drug cartels. Because who controls these prisons? The government. How does he, a prisoner, get access to all these things? By, how do you say this? By bribing them. So right now, we also do not have any sort of trust with our authorities because most of them, if most of them, some people would say all of them, are linked with drug cartels because they receive money, they are bribed, they are corrupt. So they be making decisions in order to benefit these groups or to making it easier for them to traffic the drugs within the country, to export the drug out of the country, or to simply, have a better way of living.
So it's pretty clear that this crisis in democracy taking place in Ecuador has been going on for a long time. Why do you think it took such an extreme action, an extreme event, such as on January 9th, the like gang members that overran the newsroom and threatened everyone there and held people hostage for about 15 minutes? It took that going viral, that happening live on TV, for it to break through mainstream media in the United States and then fade just as quickly. Do you think you can touch upon that? Like how can this issue have been ignored for so long and how is it still being ignored?
I think that the reason why the hostage situation in the news outlet was so global is because I think that people take a lot of. I think there is a line where you draw the line when you start targeting uh, journalists and freedom of expression, free press. That's when the world is like, whoops, that's not okay. Because we've had violence for years now. We've had a lot of like recent assassinations of politicians and things, and they did not cause a major like media outbreak because I do believe that the world expects the global south to live in constant violence and fear, and basically they think that we all of us are just like fighting for our lives, which is not that far away, but we do need to acknowledge that I think it could have been because of that, because it's targeting innocent journalists that were doing their job. And when you think, oh, that politician was killed, you instantly are like, oh, maybe they had ties with the narcos and the drug cartels and all these things. And it was a big thing because it wasn't only like the hostage situation, but that led to also the how do I say this? Decreto Ejecutivo, which is basically like an order from the president in which he declared that we were inside like an armed conflict, an internal armed conflict, which is something that we've only heard in like as a political scientist. I believe that happened, for example, in the 70s and 80s in the Federal Republic of Germany. I believe that also was used in the 80s in Colombia. It was like the first time, at least in my short life, that I've heard that. And that caused a lot of impact because I think most of them were like, oh, these things happen, like Latin America is violent, but then there were like innocent people involved in all these things that led to a president being like, oh, this is serious. I think that's when they were like, oh, this could be serious. I think it was the first time in which these drug cartels and bands were named and I would say like señaladas. They were pointed at, and everyone was like, "Oh, that is new. Like they're taking action in retaliation for the hostage situation." But it also fade away mad quickly because we still have the violence, we still have deaths, we still have everything, and we've had them for a couple of years now. But yeah, I think it was because it involved free press, and most of the how do I say that? Like the media outlets here in Ecuador, some of them right now are going through some like financial issues, and I mean, it's a rumor, but most of them are like paid by the government to say good things about them, or they're part of what we call oficialismo, which is basically they support the government and they only say good things about the government. So like the major media outlets here in Ecuador, like El Universo, Ecuadisa, which is another TV channel, yeah. But that's sort of my way of thinking. But I think it didn't make a lot of like news either. I think it could have been like you guys knew about this and everyone like found out because I think because you study journalism, so it's something that like directly targets your profession and poses a threat to your well-being as a professional.
So, as I mentioned before, I can't find a lot of reliable sources when researching for this topic. Like, why is it that only independent media sources are reporting on this corruption? Because, for example, a lot of what I could find about Fernando Villavicencio was that, he was very anti-corruption and anti-gang violence, and that was his whole campaign when running for presidency. Um, and it's actually what got him killed. And so now he's painted as a martyr. Everything I could find about him points to him dying for his cause. But according to what you've told me and what others, that's not the case. That he got too confident and he thought he was protected by, well, he thought he was protected because of his dealings in the past. However, I can't find any record of that online. So, do you think maybe you can speak about why that is?
There's I don't like here in Ecuador we don't have a lot of like free press and stuff because during the Rafael Correa government there was a lot of persecution. I don't know how to say this in persecution. Prosecution, I don't think that's the proper word, but it basically he targeted all of those journalists that spoke badly of him. So right now we have a lot of major media outlets, which are, for example, El Universo, El Telégrafo, media channels like Ecuadis and all of those. But most of them are in favor of the current government. So we do not have a lot of like, how do I say this? Places to fact check realities and stuff. Like, not realities, but news. Most of them are, for example, we just had a consulta popular, which is a referendum in which the government was trying to measure their acceptance level, and they also have 11 questions in which they wanted to basically make it easier for policemen and the army to be around people and to defend them. But we've only had an increase in deaths and violence in the past month ever since like we had that consulta. We actually like have some sort of like independent media outlets, but most of them are like quite. For example, there's one called GK, which used to stand for Guayaquil, as in Guaya, and kill people. And then it became Heka. But recently, there's been also accusations that they do not pay their employees. So a lot of us have been like, what the fuck? Because, well, if you're an independent media outlet that makes you question the government, their ties with the drug cartels, with corruption and everything, and then you're not paying your employees, that's a little bit incoherente, if you ask me. But yeah, I'm still gonna like try to find at least some research on that. Because the thing about Fernando Villavicencio is that he was a really like, oh, there's a lot of corruptions and things and that. But then at the end of the day, when the moment came to like show proof and everything, it wasn't like he wasn't showing it, and he was also part of the Congress, La Asamblea Nacional, and he, like I said, a lot of people in Congress face what is called corruption. Here we have something called clientelismo, which is a practice in which someone pays money to you, like literally gives you a like a bag of money in order for you to legislate in their favor. So those are a lot of practices we have uh, in our beautiful and complicated country. But yeah, it's not that he was a corrupt himself, but being involved in the political sphere basically forces you to have connections or be corrupt or be involved in any sort of these things. So yeah, he was very critic like of the Correa government, and he still is, but he's not like, oh, the savior of everything, of everyone, and he died as a martyr and stuff. But there are a lot of things going on about him too.
Wow, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and speaking about these things. And I know that there's so much that we didn't get to cover because there's just so much to talk about, but I really appreciate your time and for, shedding light on this problem that a lot of people just don't know or understand.
Okay, thank you so much, Kayla, for speaking to me and taking interest in understanding what's going on in Ecuador. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.